Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
You have got to get up pretty early to go do something. We are the Alternative Dig Talk. With our mobile studios, we are redefining TV presentation just as technology is setting the pace. We are blending our approach with fresh, perspectively designed breakfast show, The Mighty Drive, informative and entertainment show, exclusive and live interviews.
We President Museveni wadde juzi namulaba apima akawunga kilo 2 tasobola kalya nini bwaba alya kilo 5 weyannema okuliisa eggwanga ne bwe limundekera.
Njagala kwebaza the Alternative Dig Talk etuwadde kano ka Mighty Drive era n'abatuwuliriza bonna abali ku mikutu njagala basaba mugendo maaso n'okuwuliriza.
All given to you just a click away on your phone, tablet, laptop and smart TVs as we are streaming live on our social media platforms, on the road and on the go. We are the Alternative Dig Talk.
The world is at a critical moment of providing innovative alternatives as a means to create change.
As such, we have created a not-for-profit alternative mobile digital platform as a way to promote space for freedom of speech and expression to the unheard voices.
We know you believe in the cause and you can further it more by contributing to its sustainability in forms of internet data, fuel, and any other support you deem relevant.
Please support us with your contribution to Equity Bank account number 103-5201-607252 under the name Alternative Digital, or our mobile money numbers 0702 900076 or 0783 047785. Alternative Digital, real issues, real talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Good morning, all our viewers. We wish to first of all apologize for the delay, and this is as a result of the powers that be who considered going with the internet cable. So sometimes we have to take a while to connect, but we thank God that we are on air and everyone out there is watching, and we are good to go. My name is Tumuhimbise. We have the Mighty Drive. Most likely when we have Professor Kanyeihamba, it's more or less Mighty Drive special because this time we don't drive, but we share with him from his room, from his house in Buziga. He always says a good view. Yeah, where we are, we can view the lake, so there is a good lake view. We are at Professor Kanyeihamba's home, and the last time we had him was the previous Friday when he was launching his 31st book under a title, Evolution of Constitutional Law, Public Law and Government, an event where we had Professor Pedro Olumumba, we had Jacob Olanya, the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, and so many other distinguished guests, and it was indeed a great event. Thanks for honoring our invitations at a time. Prof, the world is watching you. May you please say hello to the viewers of Alternative Digital.
Hello, viewers, everyone. Let me wish you good Friday. We Christians, this is a Holy Week. It is Easter, and we remember that this is a weekend that our Lord Jesus Christ suffered, died, and resurrected, and he saves us from our sins. So it's a very, very memorial day for those of us who believe in God and Christ. Happy Easter. Having said, I wish to start by thanking Digital Talk TV for co-hosting the launch of my book. As the moderator has said, it was very well attended, and since then the reactions from those who attended and who listened to the contributors on that day have expressed happiness that they were able to come and share in the launch of that book, and therefore I'm very grateful for you and your colleagues in the Digital Talk show for having undertaken the responsibility which you fulfilled very efficiently.
Humbled, sir. I want to begin quickly and also have a hint from your perspective as someone who has experience, first of all, when it comes to in regards to the age, for example, and being a Christian too, and also a Christian viewers there, but also and other believers. Do you think that religion has done? I mean, have played, especially the religious leaders. Do you think they have played their role towards shaping the society? Because being a Good Friday, so
they certainly have. They certainly have. The most prominent schools in Uganda were started, and some of them continue to be run by missionaries, religious leaders with dedication and the faith. And majority of Ugandan leaders of whatever faith have been groomed and from these schools. There is hardly any good school in Uganda which is not connected with the with one or more of the religious faith that we have, and therefore Christianity and Islam, our main two faiths in Uganda, have done tremendous work, those who believe in them, in enlightening this country, educating us to modernity, and certainly, despite our weaknesses and the evils that tempt us, they also taught us the religious morality. And all religions teach good morality, and they are all good regardless of where they originated from. It is the weakness of us believers and followers who fall by the wayside and the sin.
There we go. We are with Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamaba. Wanted to also give a hint about the relevancy, or if there are any successes and achievements by the religious leaders, but in particular, because it's a Good Friday, about Christians. Good. We are on the Mighty Drive, and we are on our social media platforms. That is the Alternative Uganda, that's Facebook, and also Alternative Uganda on Twitter, Alternative UG on Twitter, and then YouTube, the Alternative Uganda. In our second hour, for those of you who want to get in touch with Professor Kanyeihamba, don't hesitate to call in our second hour, but we need to have this so that you have the number on you. Don't hesitate to call 0789017145. Our studio line is 0789017145. Those of you that missed the launch of the book, please walk into the bookshops, Aristoc, Uganda Bookshop, and Mukono Bookshop, and get the book. It's as cheap as 100,000 Ugandan currency. That's more or less a cup of tea in some of these biggest coffee shops. So it's a book that goes for 100,000, and you'll enjoy the 700 pages of Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamaba. Let's begin, Prof. This week, Uganda was celebrating 100 years ever since the parliament, for lack of another word, started, and I want to believe that it was legical. Is it legical? When, okay, 100 years of parliament. Please take us through on whether the parliaments that we have had, parliaments, I repeat, because I mean different houses, that's why they will say 11th parliament, 9th parliament, whether they have played the role for which that parliament was founded and established.
On the whole, you know, we have had parliament every 5 years of a different composition. It has tackled different problems of the country. And on the whole, the Institute of Parliament has performed fairly well, generally. But there have been times when it has failed this country to live to its expectations. There are many incidences where history records that the Uganda Parliament failed this country, especially in its role as the overseer of public authorities, including the executive. And it has reached its lowest ebb, I'm afraid to say, during the reign of the NRM party. I say party very advisedly, because when its predecessor, the NRM movement, provided the legislature of this country, it did extremely well. It was broad-based, it was representative of the people, and it always concentrated on the agenda placed before it by the people. But for about 10 or 15 years now, the legislature has more or less lost its vision. It's become the most expensive organization in the country. Its leaders virtually do whatever they want, provided they turn up at the right time and vote the ruling party. Indeed, President Museveni is on record as having said, when people said parliament members sleep during very important liberations, President Museveni is reported to have said he doesn't mind if they go to sleep, provided when they wake up, they vote the right way. That is really very cynical of politics. So, since about 10 or 20 years, this country has got the rewards from the legislature have been receding. We are getting diminished returns. Correspondingly, it has become the most expensive parliament in the world per capita. We are the largest legislature, certainly per capita in Africa and in Europe. Secondly, many of the constituencies have not been debated by the people. And yet Article 1 of our Constitution says power belongs to the people. Everything is derived from the people. The ruling party, known as the Movement Party, has totally reduced the fundamental law of the land, the Constitution of Uganda, particularly as promulgated in 1995, to just an ordinary idea. The resolutions of the ruling party, the NRM party, and its leadership, particularly the presidency, has become the supreme law of the land. This is very sad and tragic that when we promulgated the Constitution 1995, President Museveni, who was chief guest, stood up in the Constituent Assembly and they said it was the best constitution that the Ugandans had made. In my book, The Political and the Constitutional History of Uganda from 18 to 94 to the present, I said that that constitution, one of its merits, was it subjected the president and all other organs of government under its authority. That the constitution was supreme, more than the cabinet, than the president, and so forth. But that has been reversed by the activities of the leadership of the NRM and a toothless parliament where members of parliament are only there for themselves. They no longer think about serving the country, and by that they are led by none other than the party's leader, President Museveni, who is reported to have said he is not a servant of anybody, he is there to do his own work. It's very tragic that I speak this way on Good Friday. It should be good news, but I'm afraid as far as the Parliament of Uganda is concerned, it's very bad news all round. It's a very toothless, very expensive organism which ought to be reformed as soon as possible if Uganda is to behave like any other modern state with the economy at at disposal, you will find that many of these who have become constituencies for parliament were created personally by the leadership of the NRM. President Museveni would be campaigning, and when people demand, we want a district here, he say, I am giving you a district. And then, as soon as he has said, you little hamlet, I'm giving you a district, he directs parliament to pass the law. And they pass it. President Museveni has never suggested that either clan or tribe should have a district, and the parliament rejected. Compare that with what happened in Nigeria. Mr. Obasanjo, who came here, the former president, he wanted to extend another term, and the parliament refused. In Uganda, it's tragic. For example, we have heard about, for 30 years, for almost 30 years, maybe about 6 elections, presidential elections. In every petition, the Supreme Court says mistakes were made. This constitution needs to be amended. They have never listened to the Supreme Court. No amendment suggested or proposed by the judiciary when it is hearing petitions and giving its findings. Let me tell you how bad it is. Even the courts have failed to appreciate what the Constitution is all about. Every time there is the challenging of presidential election, which of course is Museveni, he wins every time. On 2 occasions, reports have indicated that he didn't win, but he does. And why? Because he has got the security and the police under his control. During the elections, this last election, 2021, one army command general said these people are wasting their time. Do they think that if Museveni lost, we would hand over power to some other person? I expected him to be blasted and disciplined, but it seemed that his statement was welcomed because nobody said anything after that.
Such statements are intentional. Such statements are intentional in your view?
They are intentional.
Okay.
They are intentional, and they are intended to frighten voters. Say, don't waste your time voting opposition candidates because we shall not hand over power to them. How can, in a democracy, where the leader of the NRM movement, not party movement, campaigned to restore multipartyism and the partyism? The culture now is that those opposition members who are in the parliament are by description enemies of the people. It's only in Uganda that anybody who's a So I am afraid we don't have a parliament worthy of its name. We have a huge organism which sucks the blood of Ugandans. They are the best paid people in the country with the diminishing returns from Parliament. So when we started, Parliament was small, about 100 or so people. Now it is over 500, and let me tell you, they don't sit in Parliament because there is no space.
That's why they are having an extension.
It is a tragedy in Uganda. So to talk about the legislature in Uganda, about Parliament, is, you see, it is tragic. There are some very good people who are elected to Parliament, few ministers, but the rest of it is the rest of that.
Those are words of Professor Wilson Kanyeihamaba, and given the experience that he has, no doubt that his word is close to gospel truth, especially when it comes to constitutionalism, good governance, and rule of law. Prof, I wanted to ask you on behalf of our viewers that as a draftsman, you gave powers to Parliament to check to check the presidency or to play the supervisory role. Who checks Parliament in the event that it is inefficient and ineffective? So who checks Parliament? Is there any mean to check?
In a true democracy of a modern state, obviously, we say what we call separation of powers and checking one another. And when you read this new book, which you launched, yes, between them, Parliament and judiciary should check and control the executive. Conversely, the executive and the Parliament should moderate the judiciary. And then between them, the other two. So what I'm saying that our constitution is balanced in such a way that the two of the three organs should be in a position to control the other. But because we lack a parliament with culture and integrity, and the judiciary, which is beholden to the executive also, should be independent. The executive has become the most powerful organ in only appoints ministers who he knows will be subservient to his view. And therefore, we have authoritarianism in Uganda. And what the president says shall be done by everybody. Judges try their best. The president was very keen, and he succeeded in amending the constitution so that term limits, which we all were unanimous agreed should be there, he removed them. Age limit, when he was about to reach 75, he made sure it is removed. Those ministers, very powerful ministers, who opposed the removal of term limit and the age limit, were dropped from cabinet. Parliament you are talking about, with the removal of term limits process, they were bribed, each of them giving 5 million, those of the NRM especially, to agree with the executive and remove term limits. That was the bribe. Since then, the elections to Parliament, which will where they get the bulk of the ministers is based on corruption, bribery. At one time, I used to write an article in the Monitor. By the way, Monitor also has been intimidated that Kanyehamba's article should not appear there. They no longer appear. And the people ask me, why don't you still write your land view? You ask, I told them, you ask the editors of Monitor, and you have never given me no answer. Anyway, to cut the story short, Uganda is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And that corruption has been fueled and perfected under the NRM. Now, the funny thing is, President Museveni knows. He will say, my ministers are corrupt. Recently, after this election, he said the policeman is the most corrupt in the world. But the funny thing is, you never hear he has sacked one of them, or he has challenged one of the ministers to sack any of them. So, President Museveni is playing with Uganda like a plaything, like a toy, and we have accepted his games.
Okay.
Excuse me, you have to forgive me a bit. Can you hold?
Corruption, mismanagement, misgovernance of our PAL, and this makes us wonder as a generation on how best can we do things differently, either by asking tough questions as a generation and or providing alternatives in the event that they are able to accept our alternatives. And indeed, it's a pity, because if you see by how things are moving, it shows that as a country we are doomed, for lack of another word, because if corruption continues the way it is eating us, look at these unjustifiable loans that we get from so many providers. It could be IMF, it could be so many banks and other financial institutions that are borrowing Uganda money, and this money is going into administration, which Prof has said that Uganda has the most expensive parliament. It's more or less a liability, because we're trying to discuss our 100 years of parliament or of legislature, and to him the parliament is a liability. We are spending a lot of money which isn't justifiable. First of all, it's not appropriate, especially when it comes to the services that we get out of the payment and the monies that we spend onto parliament. For example, we are now going to have over 529 MPs come May this year. 529. If at a minimum each gets close to 30 million and also over 300 or there about million to buy new vehicles, I can assure you we are at it again. Prof, we wanted to hear from you definitely before we leave Parliament. On a scale of 10, mark your Parliament. How many marks would you give the Parliament that we have now? On a scale of 10, in regards to the purpose for which it was founded.
I would say 10. Our parliament, as professors, we were not allowed to give minus. So I would give it 0.
Prof, Are you honest with your answer? And could you please?
I am.
Oh,
because you see,
you'd give your parliament 0 out of 10.
Yes.
Otherwise, you would give them negative. If it was
if I was allowed, I would give them -5.
Would be demanding them already.
Because you see, it is the most expensive structure in this country. We are spending billions and billions of shillings on it. But it is delivering nothing. Currently, in other countries, the speaker should be campaigning among MPs. But they are campaigning for the president, either to elect them or not. The other day, when their quarreling became embarrassing, the president summoned them, the candidates, 2 of them, and he said, shut up. And they shut up. So why do the parliament we have today is not for the country. It obeys everything the NRM leadership says. It can never challenge President Museveni. In one act, the president was abroad on duty. Parliament debated and said, we set up an independent body to monitor, sell, and negotiate about our oil. When he came back, he said, no, I don't want to lose control. I want my minister whom I have appointed to be in charge. He cancelled the bill. He cancelled it and the parliament kept quiet. That's why I give it 0. As far as serving this country is concerned, 0. If you say parliament, big as it is intended to serve Museveni, the leader of the ruling party, then I could give them 100%.
Good. Our viewers out there, we are still on the Mighty Drive Show with Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamaba. He's just launched his 31st book under a title, Evolution of Constitutional Law, Public Law and Government. This book is a good one. It's a wonderful one. It was launched last week. And it was launched last week. And this book is in bookshops, but also reaching the alternative Uganda. We can enable you get copies. Law students, you know what it means reading Kanyeihamba's books. And general citizenry, don't hesitate to get the book. It's in the bookshops in town. You can grab your copy and enjoy his writing. But most importantly, is discussing governance and law and also constitutionalism. Prof, before we leave Parliament, let's talk about the speakership race. In your view, I have 2 concerns that I wanted you to share with the world. First of all, do you believe that it's fair enough for a Speaker of Parliament to come from political parties and also to come from a member of Parliament? Or you would rather have an independent parliamentarian, maybe a retired justice or otherwise, in your view?
No. I believe in democracy, and the people, the political parties represent the views and aspirations of the people, and therefore we should continue having political parties. I am against authoritarianism, just as Museveni was when he was still the Museveni we knew as a democrat. So political parties in a democracy where there is freedom and the rule of law are essential for governance, because when one of the parties wins power, the others, their members are in parliament, to bring the ruling power to account, if it gets out of the control or it is misgoverning the country, it is the political party and the supporters who do so. I have often wondered why our political parties, they've been here for a long time, they have never even sponsored a newspaper which is independent and through which they can talk. I have talked to the leaders of these parties. Certainly the leadership of UPC used to have a paper. It started a paper called Uganda People's Paper, whatever. The EP had a publication. And views which are bringing the government to account would be expressed there freely. But since the NLM came into power, all newspapers, you either have to support the NLM or be owned by an NLM supporter or perish. You don't publish. That is why a new vision. At the moment, somebody wrote a review of my book, which we launched last week. And what you have forgotten to say is that that book has been reviewed, rather the preface has been reviewed by none other than a justice of the Constitutional Court, Court of Appeal, Justice Ngonda Ntende. And anybody who wants to buy that book, when you go to the bookshop, before you even buy it, it is a small page, one page. Read what Justice Ngonda says about it. He recommends it to the general reading. And he regrets that that book had been out when he started studying law, it would have been very, very helpful to him. So the book is not just for lawyers or for experts, it is for everybody. I endeavor in my writings to communicate with everybody, the lowest among Ugandans. I have just finished a monograph. When this election came, I saw what was happening. I couldn't believe that these lawyers, even the judges, have ever read the Constitution.
We're going to that, Prof.
I have mourned that we don't have a reading culture. But I saw that lawyers and judges at least read. They don't, as we are going to say.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. I want to close Parliament and with these two questions, Prof. One, I am sure that you have been following and or watching the sequence of events, especially in the speakership race. And you have seen a one whom young people and those typical, for lack of another word, typical opposition say is suitable, and that's none other than Semujunganda. But you find opposition members of parliament chanting and in support of Kadaga. What do you learn from such opposition? Are they honest? Do we indeed have opposition here? Is it on principle that they have a right to support Kadaga and say Museveni is bad but Kadaga is good?
Now, I want first of all to declare a personal interest because people have misunderstood. When we were inviting people to the launch of the book, I asked a very high official of government as to who I should invite. I told him that my book, nearly 10 years ago, The Blessing and the Joy of Who You Are, the guest of honor was none other than Rebecca Kadaga, the then, still now, Speaker of Parliament. So it is the government which advised me that why shouldn't you also invite, since you like these people to be the one to launch your book, her deputy chief justice, rather deputy speaker. That's how I invited him. On the advice of the government.
You weren't providing him a platform to shine as...
Pardon?
Your invitation towards Right Honorable Jacob Olanya wasn't intentional, especially in regards to the speakership race.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. He's a good man, by the way.
As pro Olanya, vis-a-vis...
He's a good man. And secondly, when I finished my 2 terms, I retired. A number of senior ministers in the current government are not standing, or they have not stood. They include the Prime Minister himself. They include the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sam Kutesa, and many others. Then I was very, very touched by what one of the ministers, who has been there quite a long time, said after she rose her seat. She said, I think people, we have served enough. We are fed up. Rather, we are tired. So I don't mind. I think people are right to remove me. She was great. This was Minister Champade. But let me tell you, I am not mincing words. President Museveni, I think, loves this country. And I want him to show the love of this country by telling us sooner rather than later, a few months after, presumably, he takes office in May, or rather, everybody takes office in May, to say this is his last term. Because by the time this term ends, he will have governed this country for 40 years. Even when Queen Victoria, who is hereditary, lived on for more than 40 years, people said, when will she give her son the opportunity to govern? She lived on. The Queen of England, his son, who is to inherit, is in his 70s. That is not right. Prof. By the time he becomes king, presumably, he would be 80. And I think people have said in England that the Queen should abdicate for her grandson, which is very, very important. Her grandson is now bald. Now, look at Museveni. 40 years governing this country. The one who was born, just born when NRM came into power, is now bald and gray-haired. So, to me, I want to quote Nagenda. John Nagenda is a columnist in New Vision. He's a fanatic supporter of President Museveni. It's almost divine worship. But he recently wrote, he said after the 2021 election, Museveni should retire. There are millions and millions of Ugandans who would wish him to retire in peace without a coup or anything like that. Secondly, many Ugandans would congratulate him because on the whole, he has brought sanity in the office of the president. He is respected internationally, but also the international community is tired of him. The European Union, the Americans, the Indians, one way or the other have shown
At the time of him.
When shall we have a successor to you while you are still alive, Mr. President Museveni? In the middle of this term, he will be in his 80s. I don't think even Museveni himself would feel comfortable offering himself as a candidate again
2026.
when his grandchildren are reaching an age where they could be
Leaders.
members of parliament.
Okay, we are with Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamaba, and we are on the Mighty Drive show on the Alternative Uganda social media page, that's Facebook, and also the Alternative Uganda on our YouTube. Prof, I do not want to assume that you avoided my question. I'm bringing it back. Opposition is deserting their own Semujunganda in support of Kadaga. What is your take?
The way I understand it, there are several candidates for deputy. I think the two who are speakers are Kadaga and Oranja. I don't know how true it is. You find out. But I understand, you remember, in the previous parliament, the two also pitted for the speakership. And I am told there was an understanding that this time Kadaga should be speaker. And the next parliament, if they should be elected again, it will be Olanya who would be speaker. If such understanding was reached, Right Honorable Kadaga used to be my lawyer when I was a judge, his personal friend, although these days she's too busy even to say hello. I invited her to the launch of the book, and she didn't even answer. She's been in office as speaker for, isn't it, over 20 years?
As speaker, yeah, as deputy 10, and as full speaker 10.
10, so 20. And I think, in my opinion, Parliament, the 11th Parliament, in my opinion, and I hope Kadaga will not kill me, needs fresh, a fresh person. And
what do you mean by fresh person? Should that be Olanya or from opposition, like Semujunganda?
It would be ideal if we got. No, I think it has to be Olanya, because you see, we are a democracy, and in all legislatures in democracies, the speaker is usually from the major party in the parliament, and the moment NRM. So whether we like it or not, they would like their own person, their own MP, to be speaker. Maybe they can even the deputy speaker, it's difficult for the ruling party, even in democracy, to let one of those, speaker, deputy speaker, be a member of the opposition. So I don't think it can be.
Let us hear your honest opinion, Prof. Because a parliament, it's very key. Remember, it's playing a very big role towards sinking the country or developing the country. What do you think hasn't been achieved by Olanya as deputy speaker that, in your view, he would achieve once he becomes full speaker? Because more or less, same for the seniority. This one is deputy speaker, and this one is the speaker, and this one is the deputy. Is there? Do you think there are things he hasn't achieved that he needs to first become full speaker?
No, when you are deputy, even vice president, you don't achieve much. First of all, the office itself. I'm not saying President Museveni or Right Honorable Kadaga didn't allow. But the office in such a way that everybody goes to the substantive holder. You are left on the latch. Nobody consults you. When they want some big person to represent government, they call Kadaga. When they want what Parliament speaks about, they want Kadaga. It is not the fault of Olanya that he didn't do anything.
So in Africa, the deputies are being suffocated by...
Absolutely. I had a deputy minister, Minister of State, Israel, and he was very good. And he helped me to run the butter trade. He was excellent. But every time they wanted me to explain anything, they would call me. The president would call me. The foreigners would visit me. They didn't
care about you
once care about there. So never ask what a deputy did. They are never given any opportunity at all. So we don't know what he's capable of.
Doing once he becomes...
I saw them both fighting, rather making statements about term limits. I think I saw Orania saying that he helped Parliament to pass the Term Limit Act.
Even Kadaga
for
was
me,
about it.
and also, and now, if you ask all Ugandans, is that something to be proud of? If I was the speaker, I would be very shy to be associated with that. Do you know why? The current Chief Justice, Justice Wide Doro Owine, I think he calls Alphonse Doro Owine. He has said, he's the current one, Ugandans, we made a mistake in removing term limits. Now, how can you be a speaker or deputy speaker and you are proud of this, where our chief justice said we made a mistake? Do you want to be proud of having made a mistake? No, come on.
Okay, we are closing with 2 questions about about Parliament, and then we come back to the presidential petitions.
Right.
First of all, where do you see one of the two in the event that he or she loses? Do you see Kadaga or Olanya becoming an ordinary member of Parliament, or you anticipate that once one of them loses, their boss, your former boss and your friend Mr. Museveni, would appoint one minister to avoid humiliation, or he would rather consider them dumped, one of the two?
Do you know, Norman, I tend to deal in certainties. And I shy away from expectations. So my answer to that is, I don't know.
You don't know what might be fall onto. Finally, from Parliament, in your view, if you were, because now following the sequence of events about this friction,
yes,
the friction between Kadaga and, because it's been public,
that's right,
no doubt, and we're not hiding this, it's been public, even it has more or less divided the Parliament. If you were in Museveni's shoes, how best would you manage such situations, especially among between your two cadres, Olanya and Kadaga?
Kadaga has led so many parliaments. From what you told me, both as deputy and the speaker, some 20 years. I don't know when Olanya became. When did he become?
This time he will have made 10 years also as deputy.
Parliament, you are right, is divided.
And by the way, Prof, and so are the regions. If you have followed.
Yeah, I am told. I know, for example, that some eastern districts have, they say they would vote Kadaga. I believe many MPs from the Western region will also similarly vote Kadaga. But that is not, the fact that she could have a majority of those regions is not a panacea for peace in parliament. So Museveni doesn't appoint. The constitution says the speaker should be elected by parliamentarians. From what I have told you, it's very difficult to know who should be speaker. I am a Muchiga by tribe. And if Hakana Rugunda was not prime minister and he was staying in the parliament as a member of parliament, it has to be somebody elected, not imposed from outside. I think he would be very ideal speaker of parliament. But I don't think he qualifies, nor does he want the job. When you look around, there are a number of people who are qualified to be speaker. In the previous parliament, somebody like you are talking about him, but he's not a member of the ruling party, Semuju. He would be. If somebody like Matia Kasaija, but he's from the West. So the West now dominates government. We have prime minister, we have the president, we have army commander, we have the governor of the Bank of Uganda. So I think that to be fair, it should be somebody from somewhere else. The Chief Justice now is from the northern region. When I was a judge, let me tell you, our prime minister was Apollo Simbambe, the late professor. And some people speculated I could have been Chief Justice, but I don't like administration. So, but if they had offered me the post of Chief Justice, it's an honor, great honor, I would have taken it. So at that time, I don't know whether he was politicking, we had the reception saying goodbye to our long-serving and very respected Chief Justice, Wambuzi, Samuel Wambuzi. And we had the reception at his house. Everybody was there, including the Prime Minister Zimbabwe. So I came to join the group. And he said publicly, he said, what a pity. Professor Kanyeihamba, you could have become my Chief Justice. You are very brilliant, you could make a good Chief Justice. He said, sadly, our politics don't allow. If the president is from one region, the speaker must come from another, and the Chief Justice from another. So President Museveni comes from the Western region. That's where you come from. So sadly, the movement, because of its balancing act, you can never be Chief Justice, while Museveni is the president. You have to be very careful. I have never held a gun, but you could kill somebody so that you can become the post. During Amin's time, a younger man came to look for a job for him in a ministry, permanent secretary. And the only job he could do was in one ministry, I will not mention it, and Amin said, you investigate. whether this post is vacant. The man said, no, it is occupied. There is a substantive permanent secretary. Within 2 weeks, that permanent secretary was assassinated, and the candidate who has been recommended by Amin became the permanent secretary.
Okay, sad to hear. We are with.
I'm not saying that either of these candidates should kill the other.
Yeah.
Because we have passed that area of Museveni. At least Museveni is not as bad as Amin.
But he's bad.
He's bad.
Good. We're going into a commercial break and coming back shortly with the Professor Kanyeihamaba. And by the way, once he comes back, students of law, lawyers, judges, and justices out there, please pay attention onto our next segment, because you have, in his view, misled and mismanaged the petitions. You are handling them as ordinary civil suits, and yet the law speaks differently. We're coming back shortly.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
You have got to get up pretty early to go do something. We are the Alternative Dig Talk. With our mobile studios, we are redefining TV presentation just as technology is setting the pace. We are blending our approach with fresh, perspectively designed breakfast show, The Mighty Drive, informative and entertainment show, exclusive and live interviews.
President Museveni wadde juzi namulaba apima akawunga kilo 2 tasobola kalya nini bwaba alya kilo 5 oyannema okuliisa eggwanga ne bwe limundekera.
Njagala kwebaza the Alternative Dig Talk etuwadde kano ka Mighty Drive era n'abatuwuliriza bonna abali ku mikutu njagala basaba mugende mu maaso n'okuwuliriza.
All given to you just a click away on your phone, tablet, laptop, and smart TVs. As we are streaming live on our social media platforms, on the road and on the go. We are the Alternative Dig Talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
The world is at a critical moment of providing innovative alternatives as a means to create change.
As such, we have created a not-for-profit alternative mobile digital platform as a way to promote space for freedom of speech and expression to the unheard voices.
We know you believe in the cause, and you can further it more by contributing to its sustainability in forms of internet data, fuel, and any other support you deem relevant.
Please support us with your contribution to Equity Bank account number 103-5201-607252 under the name Alternative Digital, or our mobile money numbers 0702 900076 or 0783 047785. Alternative Digital, real issues, real talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
thanks all our viewers. My name is Norman Tumuhimbise, and we're still with Professor retired Justice George Wilson Kanyeihamba. Professor has not retired, but Justice has retired. So he's a retired Justice of Supreme Court, but not a retired professor. George Wilson Kanyeihamba, one of the great brains that the country has, but also the academia, it has been on record that he's one of the best draftsmen Uganda has had, and also East Africa and Africa at large. And indeed, we are blessed to have him, that every when he has something new to communicate the world, we are always onto his door, and we want to thank him again and again that he always offers time to share his brains with us, especially young people and people who believe in good governance, constitutionalism, and rule of law. Prof, for so many occasions, there is one thing that always makes you more or less shed tears about the management or the mismanagement of the presidential elections petitions. And we want to offer over 50 minutes to you to either educate your juniors, for lack of another word, students of constitutionalism and constitutional law, and general public about this whole thing of presidential election petitions. To begin with, you have always been angry that people, justices of Supreme Court have misinterpreted, in your view, what ought to be simply an inquiry to a formal hearing, as if to say and mean that they are managing and handling a civil suit. Let's begin from there.
Thank you very much. This is a very important question you have asked, and it has been bothering me a great deal ever since 2006. In 2006, we inquired into a petition filed by Chiza Besigye, who had lost. And at that time, it's very, very important, the Supreme Court was composed of people, the majority of whom were constitutional lawyers. If you want a good farm, you must employ an expert in farming. So the 2001 petition was heard by 5 Supreme Court judges. I wasn't on it. We were in 6, and there was a delay in appointing the 7th. And because I was the juniorest of the 6, the Chief Justice, Odochi, dropped me and put in Jessica Lokola. So they were 5. Then the 2006 was the same group who decided the one in 2001, and there was number 7. Although I was not the juniorist. The juniorist now has joined us, and it was Bata Katurere. Now let me tell you, at that time, the Supreme Court consists of 7 people. The Chief Justice was none other than Ben Odochi, who had chaired the Constitutional Commission when it traveled the whole country up and down, gathering the views from Ugandans as what constitution they wanted to adopt. He was an expert on constitutional law. He came up with the Odochi report, which became the working document that we used in making the 1995 Constitution. The other members of that panel was the speaker now, Kanyeihamba, who had been the chairman of the legal and drafting committee of 15 lawyers that had debated and adopted and recommended the provisions about the judiciary. The other judge was the late Justice Mulenga, who had been the chairman of the Constituent Assembly Committee, which made recommendations for Parliament, the executive and judiciary, and their relationship with one another. Those are three eminent constitutional lawyers. The fourth was none other than the late Sekoko, Just Sekoko, who had had experience working with UPC, but he was a genius for rules. He knew every little rule that you could think of. He was part of that panel. Then the other one was Karokora, who had a science origin. He had been a medical man, and he had been a judge from the beginning, chief magistrate, judge of the High Court, of the Court of Appeal, and of Supreme Court. Very seasoned lawyer. Then the last one was Katurebe, Ondi panel. Katurebe, very brilliant and analytical lawyer, had been practiced, he had been minister, but above all, he had also been a member of the 15-man-woman committee, the legal and drafting committee, of which I chaired. These are the people, 7 of them, who had the petition in 2006. I have written a monograph. It's being now printed by the printer. And I have subsidized it because I love this country. And we have been misled and are not giving the correct interpretation by many judges since the Constitution came into power. I want everybody who's listening to me, and you said they should, lawyers and the judges, to get hold of their Constitution, of their present Constitution as amended, and look up Article 104. Please, everybody, whether you are a farmer, even if you are illiterate, ask them to read it for you. Article 104. The monograph for a book I have written, it will be about 15 to 20 pages. I have already finished it. Is headed Article 104 of the Uganda Constitution. And the heading of that article is challenging presidential elections. I want your viewers to listen to me very carefully. The committee of experts lawyers, which included the likes of Katurebe, Matembe, people like Eric Karuhanga, like Mwesije Hope Mwesije, the late Nabudere, all the lawyers who are in C, who were elected to C or nominated, because some were nominated, were on that committee. 15 legal minds, some of the best brains this country has ever produced. We debated Article 104 at length. And one of the evidence which convinced us was that when there is a petition, somebody has lost the election, they tend to exaggerate the evidence which support their case. That kind of evidence which may damage their case, they conceal, they don't put it in the affidavits. Then the respondent, that's the winner, they are anxious to justify their win, so they minimize the faults that may have been done. They justify the work done by the Electoral Commission because they are anxious to uphold the win. So some of the evidence that would have damaged their case, they conceal it. They don't get anyone to sign an affidavit saying there was cheating here, President Museveni bribed and so on. No, that evidence they will not give. Remember, we are 15 lawyers. So we all agreed that the petition should not be regarded like ordinary hearings. You hear a criminal case and they give judgment. You hear a civil case and you give judgment. But not in the petitions. So Article 104 does not contain the word hear or judgment. I wanted to ask every judge who has ever had a petition, a constitutional petition under Article 104, to tell us where they got the word judgment. It's not there. The article says if a petition is filed within 10 days, must be done within 10 days, then the court, the Supreme Court, shall inquire into the petition.
Not to hear.
Not consider, not to hear, but inquire. Look up that word inquire. So we said the Supreme Court should take initiative. Not to wait to say, you Chagulanyi prove your case. No. It should be the Supreme Court to take initiative and inquire. And then, when it has been satisfied with the inquiry, it doesn't give judgment. It gives its findings. We chose those words very carefully. And then I am the only one who gave my findings. And if 2006, you read the proceedings and the findings of the court, Kanyeihamba says, I inquired into the petition and these are my findings.
Did you ever help your colleagues to also put it that way?
We argued about it. They thought, wrongly, that there is no difference between judgment and the findings. Now, our president should be followed. But since then, it has not been followed. There are three questions. If you read our finding as articulated by Chief Justice Odochi, and if you don't have any reading I have reproduced it. What is reproduced in my book, the blessings and the joy of who you are. But you don't have to read that one, because wait, God willing, this monograph I have written is being printed. It will be everywhere. Because I have always wondered why God kept me going. I think He wanted me to enlighten our country. And one of the things to enlighten them is that never again, when you have a petition, unless people are not serious, nobody will ever consider petition or be a lawyer for a petitioner or respondent without having a copy of what I have going to reproduce. And it will tell you the Supreme Court should inquire into, and doesn't give judgment. It gives findings and orders. So let me tell you what happened. We don't have a reading culture. If you carry out a trial judgment, you reproduce what those other judges on my panel produce. You review everything that people said. You review all the affidavits. My findings in 2006 are the shortest. The longest is that of the Chief Justice, Justice Odoki, over 200 pages. Mine was about 50 pages. Because when you are inquiring, not everything is relevant. You ignore even those affidavits which don't help you to come to proper findings. So when we finished, I think I was among the first, if the only one, who circulated my findings within the 30 days I allowed. Nobody else did, because I think the next shortest opinion, I think either was Justice Mulenga or Justice Sekoko, was not less than 100 pages. The Chief Justice was the longest, 200 pages, reviewed almost everything. Then let me tell you what happened. Initially, I was like everybody else. I listened to the lawyers. First, those of Chiza Besije. Then, halfway the hearing, I remarked in the Supreme Court, some of my colleagues have since passed away, but at least Justice Katurebe and Justice Odochi are still here. They can confirm. So, thinking like everybody else, and usually I am very frank, I told my colleagues when we were having tea, that for me, I'm going to dismiss Chiza Besije because his lawyers have not convinced me that he won the election or there was anything wrong with the election. His lawyers, the mistake they made was to articulate the law instead of telling us what happened in the constituencies. Judges know the law. So you tell them the facts, circumstances happened there. Don't teach them the law yourself. So I was a bit upset that the lawyer who was pleading for Chiza Besige's case was saying the law is this one, the degree of proof is this one, beyond reasonable doubt. Any judge knows that. You tell us what happened in Rukunjiri or in Aruba during the elections. So I told my colleagues. Then I had brought all my materials here, like all the judges, to read at night, continue working. I was here about 11 o'clock at night when the late Justice Mlenga called me. He said, George, were you saying that you are going to dismiss Chiza Besige's petition? I said, yes. He said, why? I said, he and his lawyers have not convinced me that we should interfere with the result declared by the Electoral Commission. He said, excuse me, have you read Article 104 of the Constitution? By the way, the reason I'm saying, although they have carried out several amendments, that one remains intact. So it is as we approved it in 1995, 104. It is the original, they have not amended it.
They haven't seen it yet, maybe. Maybe they haven't seen it yet.
Now I think they will see it now. Now, so he called me here. He said, George, you are making the greatest mistake of your life. I said, what do you mean? He said, you don't depend on the evidence given by a petitioner or his witnesses, let alone that of the respondents. He said, you were the chairman of the Legal and Drafting Committee. And I remember your committee. Remember, he was not a member of a committee, but he was chairing the other committee which dealt with the parliament and this relationship with the parliament, the judiciary. But I remember you articulating the views of your committee and telling us that the judges of the Supreme Court must take initiative and have a responsibility to discover which candidate won or lost, or whether none lost, but they should repeat the election. And he said that's why we avoided the words trial, judgment in Article 104. Then he said, none of the parties cited the report of the Commonwealth observers. Look at it. There was this affidavit by so and so, another one by so and so. It was not convenient for either of the sides to produce it. But we as judges, we take initiative and look at them. Look at them. I sat there, I switched off television, and I read them. I said, oh my God, I made a mistake. So after reading those, which neither Chiza Besige nor President Museveni or the Electoral Commission had conveniently ignored or produced, then I said, no, this petition must be allowed. That's why I changed my mind. In the end, I want to tell you, when we considered the petition the first time, 5 of us wanted to allow the petition, and only 2 were hesitant. Then what happened afterwards, what developed was not legal, but political intimidation and fear. 2 of us, of the 5, changed their minds just before we announced our findings. So those who wanted to dismiss became 4, and those of us who wanted to allow remained 3. The 3 were Justice, the late Justice Odell, the late Justice Sekoko, and Kanyeihamba. Now, I think I have never known the reasons why all my colleagues were reluctant to give our findings. But I can understand. Remember, their findings were very long, or they call them judgments. I don't know where they got the word judgment from. The Constitution is clear. It's not even an investigation. It is an inquiry. You inquire into the petition and they give reasons. But for me, I inquired into the petition and they gave reason. Using exactly the words the CA, the founders of the Constitution, used. And I would like to know my colleagues, even recently, where do they get the word judgment, or trial, or hearing, or depending entirely on what the petitioner and his or her witnesses and the respondents have said. It's not there. But it helps the ruling party. We fought very hard because if you read our findings of 2006, we were 7. We were unanimous that the election was not free or fair. This is what Odochi read. The other question was the provisions of the Constitution followed. Unanimous, no, they were violated. 7 out of 0. Where the Presidential Election Act obeyed. 7 out of 0. No, it was not obeyed. It was violated. Was the Electoral Commission Act complied with? 7 out of 0. No. Were there intimidation? 7 out of 0. Yes. Were there vote rigging? 7 out of 0. Yes. Then comes the question which was insisted on by the fanatic of the NRM. The last question is, notwithstanding your findings, remember 7 of us are unanimous. It was not free or fair. The laws were broken. There was intimidation by the security and so on. We were unanimous. So it comes to that question. In your opinion, did it substantially alter the results? Now, when you read my findings, I say, yes, it did. Sekoko said, yes, it did. Then, because for political reasons and other reasons not legal or constitutional, all the others said it didn't. And therefore, the election should stand, which is ridiculous.
After answering all the other questions with wonderful answers.
Yes. And the same happened on the age limit reservation. They were critical. Even the then Chief Justice, who was the Deputy Chief Justice and presiding, he said, why do people want to change the Constitution when the ink has not dried? But he went along. And this is sad because as a judge, you are supposed to be guided by your conscience, by God, and you are not following politics. President Museveni, you don't owe him a living, he doesn't owe you a living. The fact that he appointed you is a constitutional duty. If Museveni didn't appoint Chief Justice or other judges, he would be
in breach of his duty. The fact that he's head of state and he carried out the function of appointing and confirming you has no relevancy to your royalty. Your royalty is to the Constitution, and to the law, and to the people of Uganda. When I was nominated and appointed a judge, I was not only a very influential member of the NRM movement, but I did a lot of work for it. Even President Museveni thanked me. But when it came to making decision on the referendum or the constitutionality of the army, I ceased and I couldn't act as NRM. You are independent and you become the servant of the Constitution and of the law and of the people of Uganda, and not of your party, your president, or are you beholden to the Chief Justice? Your mind is different. It cannot be controlled by the Chief Justice. One of the reasons I was not happy with Kyagulanyi withdrawing his petition is a misunderstanding of what judges are about. The 2001 presidential election, there were 5 of them, as I told you. 3 dismissed the petition, 2 allowed it. So the Chief Justice had the casting vote. It could have gone either way. The same with the 2006. Initially we were 5 to allow, then for political activity, 3 of us stood the ground, but it was the Chief Justice who cast the vote. And 4 said dismiss, 3 we said allow. I want you to ask you under those rules, how can you study the same law, analyze the same law, but in the petitions you come to different decisions by a majority of one. In the case of the other petition presided over by now the retired Chief Justice Bashka Turebe, they seem to have been unanimous in their decision. But that is not what the Constitution says. The Constitution implies that the country must know how each judge found. And if you look at the findings of our findings 2006, the Chief Justice says, I was asked to indicate how each of the judges found it. Then he said, Kanyeihamba, he ended with him, but he said, just Odell, just Sekoko, just Kanyeihamba found that the petition should be allowed. Justice Karokola, just Mlenga, just Katulebe said it should be dismissed. Then we waited for him. Could have gone either way. But he said, I also agree with those who say it should be dismissed. It's like a casting vote. Then I asked my colleagues afterwards, I said, supposing we were in the days of Idi Amin, and he had allowed elections, and he's the one where Sese Mogere is challenging. Would you say
Same.
that the election was free and fair? They said, no, unanimous. We would allow the petition. I said, why? Because we would see that it is not fair or justifiable. So the question is the Article 104, as amplified by Parliament of the NRM. Your answer is yes or no, depending on who is in power.
If it's one they like,
If you like him, then
the
election was free and fair.
If you don't,
If you don't like them, it was unlawful. It was a breach of the Constitution. And in my opinion, that kind of opinion is not worthy of that. Let me have another break.
yes, we're coming back shortly in a second, and we're still with Professor Kanyeihamba, coming just shortly in a second.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
You have got to get up pretty early to go do something. We are the Alternative Dig Talk. With our mobile studios, we are redefining TV presentation just as technology is setting the pace. We are blending our approach with fresh, perspectively designed breakfast show, The Mighty Drive, informative and entertainment show, exclusive and live interviews.
Oyo President Museveni wadde juzi namulaba apima akawunga kilo 2 tasobola kalya nini bwaba alya kilo 5 oyanema okuliisa eggwanga ne bwe limundekera.
Njagala kwebaza the Alternative Dig Talk etuwadde kano ka Mighty Drive era n'abatuwuliriza bonna abali ku mikutu njagala basaba mugendo maaso n'okuwuliriza.
All given to you just a click away on your phone, tablet, laptop, and smart TVs. As we are streaming live on our social media platforms, on the road and on the go. We are the Alternative Dig Talk.
The world is at a critical moment of providing innovative alternatives as a means to create change.
As such, we have created a not-for-profit alternative mobile digital platform as a way to promote space for freedom of speech and expression to the unheard voices.
We know you believe in the cause and you can further it more by contributing to its sustainability in forms of internet data, fuel, and any other support you deem relevant.
Please support us with your contribution to Equity Bank account number 103-5201-607252 under the name Alternative Digital, or our mobile money numbers 0702 900076 or 0783 047785. Alternative Digital, real issues, real talk.
Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
which affect people's lives and the property. We've been most unfortunate. The first European journalist to visit Uganda and write about it was none other than the late Winston Churchill of the UK. He's one who was very amazed and called Uganda the pearl of Africa. Not only that, but when he came or learned about the interior of Uganda, he found a very well advanced, well administered kingdom of Uganda, with kings called Kabakas. A very, very good administration whose rules we still keep today, even in modern Uganda, because they are good. Uganda is not because they are more than any other, but it is one homogeneous province and contained the most important institutions of learning, finance. Parliament is in Uganda, the referral hospitals, several of them are here. Because of their history, the people who live in Buganda, not necessarily Baganda, other tribes like me and you are the most enlightened, and they have the means to be so because the medium, newspapers, national and local, are printed here. So we have all the advantages and the privileges that other areas of Uganda don't have. The name Uganda came from the word Buganda, and I described the reason why in this latest publication of mine, Constitutional Law, Public Law, and the Government. But they lead the nation in political thinking. I told you that Museveni will be in his 80s come this term that we're going to start. But he has been unpopular for a long time. But there is a lot of intimidation elsewhere, particularly among the West and the East, saying Museveni is indispensable. And without him, the country will perish, which is a lie. Museveni is mortal, is human, and is liable to make mistakes as everybody is. And therefore, this kind of myth perpetuated by the fanatics of the movement, party, is intended to deny us the basic rights of freedoms of democracy, constitutionalism. And we cannot tolerate anymore. So what has happened? Buganda, the central region, has rejected the movement party and the Museveni brand of governance. Totally. Much of Busoga has rejected him. In my constituency, where they had never had the leading opposition leader, Chagulanyi, otherwise known as Bobi Wine, hundreds, he didn't win the seat there, but hundreds voted for him, even though they didn't know. Why? There is a chorus in this country that Museveni must stop being president and we go ahead. That his system has strangled the advancement and the modernity of this country. Some of the friends he has brought us don't always wish us well. They have got their own agenda. When he came in first, we loved him. He said he was a servant of the people and he would liberate Uganda for the people. He has reached such arrogancy of power that only recently he was angry when they said, you serve the people. He said, no, I am no servant to anybody. I serve the people. So there can be no clear evidence other than Museveni himself. We all know the agonies candidate Chagulanyi suffered in this country. The way he was imprisoned, the way he was hunted. His house was always surrounded by the police. after the elections, President Museveni has remarked that the police are the most corrupt institution in the country. How do you let the most corrupt institution be in charge of the Electoral Commission? But he has gone further. Museveni has said that the Kyagulanyi, the runners-up, massively rigged the presidential election and the other elections. But that's why his party won so many seats in the country. Now, that's why I said it's a pity that Kyagulanyi withdrew the petition, because that's the only evidence you wanted. Not only do I think the election was not free and fair, but even the winner has stated publicly that there was mass rigging. Therefore, no judge, not even the Chief Justice, would have said this election was free and fair. Because you would be contradicting the president.
Okay.
So finally, I have pleaded and I want to plead. And I will continue pleading. We must go back
to the 1995.
Restore the 1995 Constitution. Uganda will never have peace. We shall never have freedom unless we continue implementing what everybody agreed, where there was, unanimity. The 1995 Constitution must be restored.
Okay, words of Professor Justice Kanyeihamba. I have just two announcements to close. One is that this book, Evolution of Constitutional Law, Public Law and Government, is out there in the bookshops, but also you can reach to us on 0701 800 212 to have those copies onto your place of convenience. And by the way, I'm going to whisper onto your viewers that, by the way, most likely this August, this gentleman you see here, Professor Justice Kanyeihamba, in August is likely to launch the Kanyeihamaba Foundation. Keep it in your notice. See you some other time.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.